Hey, it's Chris, Liege Games. What do you think? Ludus Magnus Studios, their latest Black Rose Wars, exceeding and easily going to exceed the previous standalone core game for Black Rose Wars. And Rebirth is just doing that. It is giving new life to the game that already was giving a whole lot. So, what do you think? Should you back it? Is it for you? What do you need to know? The pros, the cons, how does it compare to the first iteration? Do you need another iteration for those of you that already have it? Or is this a good entry point for those of you that missed out on the first time around? Differences, pros, cons, a little bit of everything? Let's talk, because it's getting the attention, and I feel like it should get a little bit more. Let's do this. So, if you're not familiar, Ludus Magnus Studios, they have a Nova Aetas Renaissance-esque theme that is pervasive through their games, and there is some sort of continuity in terms of the same world that these are set in. And so there is always some cross-compatibility with their campaigns of putting this into that and that into this, and Rebirth is no exception. But we'll get there in a minute. Now, what do you need to know about Black Rose Wars? If you're not familiar with the product in general, it is a 1 to 4 player game where you are dueling mages in this house of mages, if you will, trying to become the successor, the head. And you are using one of the various schools of magic, of which there are a lot. I believe the first Kickstarter had something like on the order of 18 or so different schools of magic that you could choose from that gave you a different deck that you could build from and acquire to essentially take that against your opponents. And now this game did a little bit of that deck building, but it also did a heavy amount of take that. But in order to mitigate that, they made it an objective quest-based game in that sense, rather than a last man standing. So if you got killed, if you got destroyed, then you respawned. And so there was less limitation on that side of things, and not a skirmish, magical, dueling, wizards with wands sort of thing like you may normally think of. And it's hex-based with these rooms that you are going around and trying to do certain objectives to meet your quest, whether that is casting certain spells, doing certain actions in certain places, or defeating certain enemies in a certain way. So, now that you know the basic core of things, now we get into Rebirth, which, again, let's be clear, Rebirth is not an expansion. It is a standalone, meaning this is a potential entry point into the series in case you were not around, you missed it, you had no interest in it then, whatever it may be, the first time it came on Kickstarter, I believe in like 2018. So, is it worth getting in now? Is it better to try and find a previous on the secondary market or from retail? What are the differences? What is new and or improved that you need to know about with this iteration? Is it worth it from a value standpoint? Is it worth it from an upgrade in terms of errata? Let's talk. Let's pull up the pages here and go over it. So, first game, over 8,300 people, $1.3 million raised, US dollars, I'm going, of course. Now, the Rebirth expansion, you can see I'm pledging for it right now because they had an early 48-hour, early bird, early 48-hour, anyway, you know what I'm saying. Already almost at the funding goal with almost the same number of people, which honestly is pretty incredible. Now, it's a shorter campaign, so it's not the longest campaign by any means, and so you're seeing people get in, and again, there was that 48-hour rush. So let's take a look at that, because I'm always curious. 7,100 of the 7,800 are within the first 48 hours. That's not insignificant. That's a pretty big drop-off, frankly, between the early bird and the non-early birds. For essentially one character that you can easily do without. I think it's actually, the character is more for the solo side of things. So, but that is why early birds are divisive. And now this one, it was a timed early bird, so anyone had a chance to get in. It wasn't a limited number, but people are still going to be unhappy. That aside for a minute, here is what Rebirth is. Now, it's different because they say this lodge, and that's the term I should have used earlier, It has been destroyed. And now you are trying to rebuild it, and the various schools that were there previously have died or chosen exile. So you are left with a whole brand new set. That is their kayfabe, if you're familiar with that term, reason why you're not getting the previous iterations. And the new iterations, you can see in the rulebook that are already up, you get Agony, Alchemy, Hex, Techomancy, Shamanic, Nightmare, and I believe there's a couple others that are going to be announced on here too. I think there's Geomancy, and there's 2 or 3 others that have already been unlocked through stretch goals or daily unlocks. And this is basically at its core the same game. Increasing your power, fighting over modular arenas of hexagonal rooms, summoning powerful creatures, casting spells to blow up each other, or deceptions with enchantments. I mean, the gameplay itself is relatively similar. So at the beginning of this video, like if you're looking for something to be drastically different with this game, or for this game to take a drastically different approach than the first one did, and you're going to be kind of disappointed because it's more of the same thing. So if you really like the first one, it's more of that. But if you didn't like the first one, this one probably isn't going to change your mind either. Now let's talk, just at the beginning, let's talk price point, because I've already talked about the money of what it's raised, but let's talk about where things are at. Now, $153 US will get you the unlocked stretch goals and this Jukas expansion. And the Jukas expansion is that early bird that I mentioned, because if you go down here and you see this, no Jukas expansion. So what all are these stretch goals going to entail is the big question. Because now if you go over to the original Black Rose Wars, the early bird for 24 hours here was almost $20 less. You got the Chrono big box expansion, and you got the Sator big box expansion, which was all of the exclusives, which again, I cannot tell you how big this box was in terms of size, like around me right now, but it was probably about the size of a Gloomhaven, slightly bigger than a Gloomhaven box in terms of the extras. And so that is a lot of content. So already there is the potential feeling, and I've heard rumblings, I've seen comments in the comment section in Board Game Geek, that it's not as good of value. And frankly speaking, that is the big blessing curse with some of these 1.0 versions of Kickstarters. Sometimes they don't know how to fully value it or what the true value should be, and you end up getting more bang for your buck. Now, that being said, the more bang for your buck, there is about a 10-page errata on Board Game Geek 2, so you're definitely getting that. So that is the number one thing that needs to be addressed with this game, is as with many of the Ludus Magnus Studio games, the rule books have not been the most impressive by any means. They could really use an English-speaking rules person. Hire someone out to go and do it. Hire Paul Grogan. I mean, hire somebody with a pedigree of doing rule books to make it better. It's worth it. So you don't have literally freaking 10 pages Hyperspace Kraken on Board Game Geek of people asking questions and clarifications, especially when you have like 18 or 20 different classes that all need specifications and things like that. That's enough, frankly speaking, with a game that is listed as 90 minutes that can take up to 3 hours to turn people off from. If you're having to constantly do it over a 30 to 60 minute game, let alone a 3-hour game, to make you not want to get it to the table again. And there were some shipping issues. Full disclaimer, like Ludus Magnus was well late with both Wave 1 and Wave 2 with this game, and there was the snafu with the shipping side of things with the stretch goals. I'm not going to go into that any further, but it's just something that you have to be aware of. They are not going to get it in that sense to you right on time. Now, in the same light, they say at the bottom of this page on Rebirth that the core is basically at production already. And so they're just doing like the stretch goals and the expansions. But it still says it's going to be a year out, essentially. So the other question then is, are they overestimating in hopes to then say, you know, look, we screwed up the last time. We're going to get to this one to you. Oh, look, it's actually coming to you in July 2022, because everyone would love that. But is that the case or not? I don't get a good sense of them in terms of the timing. This is, as people have described it, this is Wiz War on steroids with these magical dueling issues. But the depth is much, much more. And hopefully the balance continues to be there, because I've seen people say that there doesn't appear to be like, okay, if you're this one type of magical school, you're going to win. Like, they are relatively well balanced from what I've heard. I don't have a lot of hands-on experience with this game. I just don't. I got my copy and then I sold it shortly after. So be it. But the question is going to be, how much is this going to cost you too? Because the other side of things, I believe if you go all the way down here to the all-in, I mean, there were something like 3 or 4 expansions that you could get, and these little familiar expansions, and just a little bit of everything. So here's the all-in bundle, $160. That got you Inferno expansion. Well, sorry. Here is the all-in bundle, and let me be clear, this is the all-in bundle on top of the Magister pledge. So $160 on top of the $130, so $290, because they had expansion familiars, and then non-gameplay stuff. So they're slowly trickling it out with this campaign. We've already seen a couple, and I'm sure there will be a couple more. So that's the question. Is it's potentially going to run you about $300 if you want it all. But therein lies the other question that I sort of addressed and touched on at the beginning of the video. If you have the original Black Rose Wars, do you need this? Frankly speaking, unless they put out like a drastically different rule set or they offer an upgraded rule book, I've heard a lot of people saying, you know, they haven't even gotten to half the stuff in the Sator box, which is the expansion stretch goal stuff, because there's 18 like freaking schools and like 100 miniatures plus. And that's more than enough on a asymmetrical, not really skirmish, but battling type game where it's definitely probably going to take you more than one playthrough of a specific class or school to get the hang of it and to know how things are really going to flow well. So if you say 2 or 3 games per school and you have 18 different schools, even at a 3 or 4 player count, because I've also heard that this game, if you're looking at it from a 2-player standpoint, the dynamic, the chaos, the take that is much better if you like that, and this is the sort of thing you're going for at the 3 or 4 player count. 2-player count, it's going to suffer. Now, there's a new Automa in the Rebirth, apparently, and so maybe that addresses some of that issue. But again, if you're doing a take that battling type game, I mean, those tend to be better at higher player counts. And I think that just is a little bit of common sense with these types of games. They're just not going to be as good. And so if you play primarily at the lower player counts, you just need to be aware that you might not be getting the exact same full experience that other people are, even though they're trying to accommodate that. And take that for what you will. So, I mean, you're getting plenty of stuff. There are the 6 schools that I talked about. There's a couple already unlocked down here. They give you the rule book. And, you know, this stretch goal thing, you know, we're going through the interactive map. I always feel a little weird about that. Simon's done it a couple times too. Like, you can't actually tell what's in the map. So you could easily swap it with something else that you want chosen. So it doesn't really do anything for me in terms of, ooh, I wonder what it's going to be. Because, I mean, box A versus box B could both be actually box A. Just one of them has a different label on it, and you'd still get box A either way. The illusion of choice with these types of unlocks or stretch goals. So, again, that's the cynic in me from a crowdfunding perspective now, having seen a lot of this. But, I mean, they're doing something different. They do have true stretch goals in terms of money as well. And then they got daily unlocks. So they're doing a little bit of everything here. Again, more mages that you can choose from and asymmetric powers. Again, more things you can summon, more mages, more things you can summon, another school. There's another school down here, I believe, one more. Yep, the Druidic school. So, I mean, again, I've heard good things about the schools themselves in terms of the creativity, the asymmetry, and the balance. And so that should not be the issue. But my concern is that this looks like to me like a game that would be great to play for like an hour and a half. But I've heard that the playtime runs 2.5 plus, even 3 hours. And I worry about a game like that staying its welcome a little bit too long. That would be my biggest concern, is that you get to a point where you're like, okay, we're just not getting anywhere. We're just bashing each other and bashing each other and bashing each other and not making forward progress. And then it turns that hour and a half into 2.5. So that's my biggest concern with a game like this. And so hopefully they've addressed some of that. Here you can see some of the expansions. Again, with all of these different price points. So another 24, another 33, another 10, another 25, another 10. and then the cosmetic stuff. So, I mean, you're already, if you went for the all in right now, I'd say this is probably, without doing the math up, it's probably already more than the first one, which is scary considering it has 9 days left, and I'm pretty sure they have other stuff in store. Now, again, let's talk about what you're actually getting, though, in the core pledges, because that's of note with the almost $20 difference. With your comparison between all of this stuff, with all of those stretch goals, and all of the stuff in the core versus what's in here right now, you're looking at something like just over double the amount of miniatures right now in the original, and close to double the amount of schools for $20 less. Now, that's the core pledge, and let's be frank though, if you backed that, you're great. But the Sator box, like I mentioned, had a lot of that stuff. And the Sator box itself can go for now like the price of this pledge, like $150. Now you can get the Kickstarter core, I've seen on a couple websites online, for about $40. So if you wanted to have a little bit of the extra stuff and just know the core game of things, you could easily get that with some of this. And that might be the route to go if you want a little bit more variety and the Sator box is out. Or it just depends on how much other add-on stuff they do with this. How many more stretch goals, how many more classes are they going to make in order to get you, to make you feel like you're getting a better deal? Because let's be clear, that's what it is. It's trying to make you feel like you're getting a better deal. Not, I mean, I think they already have it all planned out how many are going to be in this campaign. So that's not a mystery. So I guess when you're looking at this page and you're looking at it from a value standpoint, is it going to be worth it? Well, again, the core of the other one, as I said, the Kickstarter, this was $99. I don't know how much of that, I think, because the unlocked stretch goal Sartar box sells for $150. So you're looking at $190. So, I mean, yes, you would have made money if you would have sold this easily. Is this going to be the same? If you're looking at it from a sheer money side of things, it's really going to depend on the amount of stretch goals that they get and the amount of daily unlocks to see how big this is going to, grow on that side of things to determine if $153 is going to be the best value. If $153 is going to get you your money back if you're concerned about that. Now, as with all of these, as with almost every Kickstarter or crowdfunding game, if you're looking for, you've decided that you're going to get it and you say, what is the best value? The best value by far is always just the core pledge. The core pledge, whatever stretch goals they're offering, the expansions are always overpriced and under content delivered comparatively wise in terms of a ratio of what you're getting to price. Almost across the board, uniformly, no matter what the campaign is, who puts it out, almost every single one is exactly just that. And you just need to know that. So when you're seeing all those add-ons down at the bottom, comparatively wise, oh, it's great, I want to be a completionist, but you're going to get a lot less for a lot more. And you just need to be aware of that. Now, I guess the other side of things is, hopefully, there is going to be a whole new rule book that we have seen a glimpse of that I showed you earlier to address a lot of the errata. And so maybe less is more in the sense that they're not having to balance as much. Because I've also heard people say that if you're a rules nitpicker, that this game is going to frustrate you to no end because it's about 95% done and the other 5% you might just have to skid by on the seat of your pants. And if you're not okay with that, I'm not sure Ludus Magnus is the right company for you, because from what we've seen on their last half dozen of projects or so, that tends to be the MO. Again, I'm not no condemnation, but that's more of a fact that there's a lot of rules, things that need clarification. And if you're not okay with that, then you're probably not going to be okay with getting this, even though this is the second iteration. And I would hope, and frankly speaking, it looks more fine-tuned and would be a fine entry point. I think it would probably be a better entry point, except you get some of these magical schools that aren't nearly as mainstream, no fire, no ice, no, time, no, that sort of earth magic, the straightforward routine run-of-the-mill ones. If you want something just easily identifiable, easily thought-provoking from what you know that it actually is. you're going to see all of those in more of the core. So honestly, what you may be off better doing is just getting the core Kickstarter pledge from retail and adding it to like the core pledge here, instead of maybe some of the other expansions on this one. That is the other thought that I would have. Now, the other thing you need to be clear about is on the FAQ here, on this one, VAT is included. The other thing you need to know is it possible to pledge €1? All no reward pledges. This is the one campaign where you either pledge for a pledge level or you wait until the pledge manager, because they are going to have late pledges at a higher available price. But anything not at the pledge level is considered a donation. So it's not going to get you credit in the pledge manager. Be aware of that. Now, they do say right here on the page, why should you participate? And this gives a nice summary. Compatible, great. Okay, new room mechanic, meh. 6 new schools, okay, we've talked about that. Avatars, this is where the automatons come in that you can use, that I mentioned. Modularity, so you can set the duration. And that was, like I said, the biggest concern. Quick skirmish to epic battle. And value. I mean, yeah, Sator box tripled the value of the pledge. So the question is going to be, is it going to be the same? Because that's the blessing curse of early adopters sometimes, like I mentioned earlier. So how do you feel about being the 2.0 version? Less for your money? Maybe a little bit better overall product? I don't know. But it's going to be interesting to see where this ends up. I don't know what I'm going to do with my pledge yet, frankly. I could see myself going either way, especially with the modularity. This is one of those games where I look at it and I go, in my mind, this is everything that I would want from a mage dueling, take that, chaos reigning battler. But I look at this from a, can I get to this to the table standpoint? And especially if I'm going to need 3 or 4 and repeated plays to get the full effect, that's where I struggle with a group from. We like to play a lot of things a few times over time, not necessarily back to back or week to week, and not even the same 1 or 2 people I'm playing with additionally on the same weeks or within the several weeks. So that is the biggest challenge in a game like this. Can you get a group together to play with this to maximize its enjoyment factors in that regard? So something we haven't touched on in this video yet, and I think this is one of the other big differentiations that you need to know about Black Rose Wars, is that they have this avatar system. And these are sort of like bosses, essentially, to increase the difficulty or the variability, they say, in games with multiple players, but you can also play against them solo. And they are against like big gods, like that you're going to recognize. Gaia, for example. Odin, for example. And that they are, managed by their own set of individual AI deck or cards, if you will. They have their own peculiarities. They have their own nuances from that side of things. Odin has its own helper. And you get a special trophy if you're able to kill him. So, I mean, things like that. Gaia's going to try and do special things to the Lodge. And so, again, it's just changing how the game plays. And this might be some of the most interesting aspects of this campaign, to differentiate it from the first one and to give you more incentive to consider backing it from that side of things. Now, they say and they highlight these 2, but I think they've got a couple others, and I think a couple of those expansions that I touched on were other avatars, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a couple other avatars pop up. And now they say they can be used without problems in the original game. So you can port them over if you just want them from that side of things. And new strategies, new situations, and new stretch goals. And they say here that they just evolved out. And again, I guess as I'm putting this update in before I post this video, they're saying, hey, we're unlocking a whole bunch of other stretch goals, because I guess they maybe have heard the echoes of the same thing that I mentioned. Like, how does this compare value-wise to the Sator box? When I was looking at the components and looking at the price points going, I'm getting less for more earlier in the video. So if they're addressing it that way, giving more stuff from that side of things that they were planning on doing anyway, again, that sort of also then reinforces the whole stretch goal thing. Like, really? Stretch goals? Anyway, but that's it. And so again, more expansions, more unlocks. So now they say they're going to be packaging each of these in boxes. So obviously this is much more for the retail side of things. So that some of these are going to be at retail. You're just going to, again, sort of get it at a better price. I guess, more of the leader games route, where you're going to get it, or you're going to maybe say like the others, Seven Sins, where you can get all of them in a lump sum, but if you want to buy them all individually later, it's going to cost you more. Again, the question, do you need the all in? Do you need them all in the first place? But that's a whole nother conversation and a whole nother video. So just another interesting point there as we see more of this unlock. So now we have a couple last items that Ludus Magnus Studios seems to be just dragging out, and I've held off putting out this video just so I can include this in this Should You Back, because I think this is both a pro and a con now that we're seeing with Rebirth. And I guess the confusing thing for me is I don't know why you wouldn't include some of this stuff right at the beginning. Like, if you're going to create new modes, if you're going to create whole new ways of playing, whole new aspects of the game, highlight it at the beginning. Think of all of the hype you could have done just from the beginning, instead of saying, hey guys, we're just giving you a little bit more of the same thing. Hey, plaster, new stuff, get in on this, all over the place. That side of things, right? So here we have the Horsemen of the Apocalypse, their take on what that's going to be. And again, Ludus Magnus Studios, never been a problem from the artwork, never been a problem from making these freaking fantastic looking miniatures. Now they are slightly different because you're also going to be able to play them as basically super powered mages, and they go along with the 4 classic Horsemen of the Apocalypse themes that we know of: war, death, plague, and famine. But they give them different names than just that. So there you go. Allow you to summon them as well, and then the new game mode where you can face off against each other using their own school of magic. And again, kind of cool, but I'll get to the point where I'm a little bit concerned here in a minute. Constructed game mode. Boom. This is what I'm concerned about, and I'll tell you why in the update when we look at it here in just a second as well. I mean, this looks freaking awesome. The fact that you can play both of these, the fact that you can play it in however you want. I mean, 40 euros, whatever, that's fine. I mean, with those size expansions, I'm not surprised whatsoever. Here's an unlock, but that's fine. Now, why am I slightly concerned about the constructed mode? Because I think the whole appeal of this game in the first place is you can just pick and go. You don't have to construct. You don't have to make up a deck. You have a very well-balanced, asymmetric, unique deck in the first place that is going to work, that is going to be able to go head-to-head against any other deck, whether it is the first game or the second game, and that it's sort of its niche. And my concern is that, especially with this constructed mode, you're trying to do too much. I would love it almost in a sense if they didn't have this, not because I don't want it or not because it isn't appealing, because frankly speaking it is. And you can choose your own mage, and you can choose your own customizable talents, and you can give characteristics, basically, customizing your D&D character essentially as a mage, where you get a certain number of experience points and, what you want to do from that side of things, changing their health, their physical attack, their movement values, all of that stuff. Well, and that's fine. And then you can choose, the talents that they have in passive, library, action, whatever. But then you're having to create your own spell deck. Like, again, I worry about the balance when it comes to this. I wonder if it's just too much. And because they say, okay, well, you can have 5 attack spells, 5 contingencies, 1 trap, 1 protection. That's a lot. And then the other thing I worry about that is if you're picking and choosing, right, from 2 different, at least must be composed of 2 different schools of magic. So you're picking from these decks, and then you're going to have to put them back together. I mean, it's just one additional logistical step that's kind of cool, kind of not at the same standpoint. I love the idea of it, but I worry about the significant balance and the asymmetry that goes out the window. Now, again, if you're creative and you want to just massively experiment with things, this is great. It's like a house rule that they've thrown in. But again, is it too much at the same time? And you can also do it with the 4 Horsemen in terms of their constructed version as well. So it's a blessing and a curse, I think. I'm worried, again, like you've heard me say in other videos, if you've heard me in any of the other videos where I talk about games that have multiple modes, solo, cooperative, competitive, I worry about one of them being good and the rest being kind of okay, when you could just make one of them, focus just all of your energies onto one of them and make it truly excellent. Because I've heard other people say this, and it's worth repeating every single time, there are tons of mediocre games out there. You want excellence, 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 excellence. Not good, not pretty good, excellent. And I worry that you're almost trying to do too much with this at the same time. Now, again, I don't know. The practicality, the implementation, it's there. If I want to deck construct, I will go to other deck constructing games. The Edge Downfall, things like that have a little bit more of that tactical nature, that are truly more skirmish style games where I'm creating. Like if I want to do that, maybe I'm just going to go full customizable there. Do I really want to go halvesies? Now, again, it's easy because you can just pick from 2 skills or 2 schools, but I don't know. I have mixed feelings on it. That's my worry behind it in the first place. So there you go. Black Rose Wars Rebirth compared to original Black Rose Wars. It's an interesting comparison. If it were $25 less and you were getting the amount of content, I think that would probably be much heavier breaking point in terms of pushing me towards getting it, knowing that the value is going to be there. But that extra like $25-$30, not knowing, especially with what shipping is going to be nowadays, that could run me an additional $40 and even bring this pledge level up to $200 for a game I'm not sure of yet. That's a tougher sell than, mid 100s. And I think that is going to be the make it or break it. And I've heard people say, and they have mixed feelings about this too, the VAT is included. So non-VAT are paying for VAT. It is what it is. We're seeing it a lot more in campaigns now. And that, it splits people both ways. Like some people are just like, yeah, you know what it is? Helping a brother out, helping a sister out, helping a person out. Other people are like, hey, I don't want to pay other people's taxes. Not kosher. So I see it from both sides. And again, you have to do what's right for you. Is this game going to be able to get to the table over other Amerithrash style games with a heavy dueling, questing aspect, with asymmetry, with deck building, with moving around in modular map? Is it going to beat a dungeon crawler? Is it going to beat a puzzler? Is it going to beat Spirit Island? Whatever it may be, is it going to beat that? As a head-to-head game where it's not co-op, that's going to be better at a higher player count. Do you have a group that fits that mold and dynamic? If you do, this is a very, very strong contender, because there isn't really anything like it, and I don't think it has been replicated since it first came out, really. With the depth and the overall theme and the quality from it, even with all of its criticisms. But if you don't, can you afford to have it sitting back there, $200+ not getting played? That's the question. So, is it right for you? Let me know what you think. Where are you at on this one? It's an interesting one. It's the one that probably has left me the most confuddled, if you will, in the last couple months about what to do with it. And I don't know what I'm going to do with my pledge right now. I have no idea. I am on the fence both ways. Which, as you've heard me say, 70 to 90% of the time, that only means one thing. So, we'll see. I don't know where I'm going to go with it. As always, though, thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for putting up with me. Thank you for listening to my rambling. Hopefully this was helpful in some way, shape, or form. If you liked it, there's more where that's come from. There's more of that I've done in the past already. So either way, though, I appreciate you tuning in. Stay classy. Have a great day. Hopefully I'll see you around.